That fella couldn't do anything. He couldn't even kneel to pray. And he got saved. Are you saved? That fella couldn't join the church. He couldn't join the church. He couldn't get baptized. He couldn't get baptized. He woke up with God. He woke up with the devil. Are you saved? So that fella didn't take the sacraments, didn't take the sacraments. Didn't say the rosary, didn't take the rosary. Didn't tithe, didn't tithe. He went to heaven, he went to hell. You saved? Didn't keep the law, he didn't keep the law. He broke the commandments, he broke the commandments. He didn't keep the golden rule, he didn't keep the golden rule. He woke up in glory, he woke up in the pit. Are you saved? You're saved. If you're not saved, you're over here or you're over here. You sure ain't in the middle. He said, Lord, remember me, thou comest thy kingdom. And Jesus turned to him and said, verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be saved. It's like that. You have been saved? If you ever saved, you were saved like that.
All right. In this video, I want to do a quick refresher on Daniel chapter 2 and the statue, and take the information that I recently presented about who the iron legs really are, which helps us understand the kingdom we see forming right now of the feet of iron and clay, that we're going to take that information and then apply it to Daniel chapter 7 to see what we come up with. And I think that's where I'm going to spend most of my time, because there's a few different ways to look at Daniel 7 and those four beasts. But we need to take a look at that to help us understand Revelation chapter 13. Because we have a beast that's made up of those four beasts in Daniel chapter 7. And there's a second beast, a lamb-like beast, that a lot of people refer to as the false prophet. So what I want to do is take this information and fly through this here. So, in Daniel chapter 2, I have us all the way down at verse 31. You can pause and read this, or pause and open up your Bible and read. I'm just going to go over it. I'm not going to actually deep dive going verse by verse here. So we're told of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where he has a dream of a statue that has head of gold, that has chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron. So the kingdom starts off divided into two, right? And then it comes into the feet of iron and clay. And then in this dream, he sees a stone cut without hands, the return of Jesus Christ coming at the time of the kings of the 10 toes, being 10 kings. He hits the feet right at the statue, right at the end, and he destroys the whole thing. And then he establishes his kingdom, the millennial reign, right? Now, during the interpretation, Daniel says some interesting things. He lets us know that the head of gold is Babylon, right? And then he talks about a kingdom rising up afterwards, who has two arms, right? That's Medo-Persia. It's a joint kingdom there, right? Two arms, two kingdoms joined together that take over Babylon. And then he talks about brass, where at this time Greece was using brass weapons and armor, and conquered and took over Medo-Persia, right? But then we have this kingdom here of iron. And the iron is interesting. I know it says in that heading Rome, but I present to you that it's Rome and Islam, two legs joined together, working together. Good cop, bad cop routine, right? And it's the good cop, bad cop routine is to do two things: deceive Christians, right? Because Christians are trying to reform and break away and protest against the Roman Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church had to create a bad guy, Islam, to get Christians to join with Catholicism to fight this bigger, badder guy, right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing, right? But it was just to get people to stop fighting against Roman Catholicism and to fight this other enemy, this bigger enemy. But it's just the good cop, bad cop routine, right? So it's used to deceive the Christians, but it's also used to do the same thing with the Jews, who also didn't want to join with Rome and wanted to break away from Rome. And with Islam being right there, it makes them have to, make some friends, such as with Rome, who doesn't seem to be as bad as Islam, to then join up, again, good cop, bad copper team, getting you to choose the lesser of two evils, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of nonsense, and getting caught up in that, right? But eventually, it says that the iron become the feet, and it's iron and clay mixed together. But it says the clay is miry and it's baked. Miry being dirty and it's baked as in it's not moldable anymore. Well, Israel, God's people, is referred to as clay, as you can read in Isaiah and in Jeremiah, and even just the creation of man out of the dust or clay of the earth, right? It even makes mention of that where it says, at this time, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, at verse 43, if you want to read that there. So it ties into what Jesus said about the end of times, where it's going to be like in the days of Noah. In the days of Noah, they, the sons of God, the angels, chose to fall and mix with the daughters of men, creating giants or Nephilim, hybrids, right? And we see the same thing happen when they try to mix lions and tigers. When there's a mixture, I don't remember if it's a male lion or the male tiger, but when they mix where one of them is the male, one of them is the female, one in each species doesn't have a growth inhibitor. So when they mix together, it creates these giant ligers or tyons. I don't know what they call them. A mixture of tiger and lion there. And they become very big, where they eat 100 pounds of meat a day, right? That's like eating, I guess, a dog. They eat a whole dog every day. And that would be with the bones and everything to get the whole 100 pounds of it, right? But, yeah. But anyway, just you see here that it's going to be a return to that time of this mixing, right? That's why you see all this Egyptian stuff rising up as well, where they have half man, half animal gods and stuff, right? And mixing with technology, being cybernetic and getting everybody used to these kind of things, talking about aliens and extra-dimensional beings and CERN and all this stuff, right? It's all coming together, right? But as it says here, the iron and clay doesn't quite mix together. There's going to be issues, just like when the Jews said, we have no king but Caesar. Well, that marriage didn't really quite work out all too well, right? And it's the same thing with these peace deals. Where Israel's trying to get these peace deals with the surrounding nations, they don't always work out, right? It just doesn't seem to come together. Just like iron and clay doesn't quite mix together and really seal together. That's what we see going on now, where they're trying to establish this kingdom, but it's partly weak, it's partly strong, and it's not quite able to really cling together. But they're still going to make do, right? As it were prophesied here about what's going to happen, and that they're going to come together, and they're going to have 10 kings. And we see, like with the Abraham Accords, they're trying to get nations to join in with this. And the last I saw on the billboard, there was 12 leaders. Outside of Trump and Netanyahu, there was 10. And that makes sense for Revelation 13, where you have a beast with 7 heads that has 10 horns, and then you have a lamb-like beast that has 2 horns, right? So it seems very much similar to that, right? But time will tell, right? Time will tell. So this is a quick overview of this statue about what has happened in the past and what is happening right now and what's going to happen in the future. So we're going to see Rome and the Roman nations through the West and Roman Catholicism joining with the East and the Muslim kingdoms through Islam joined together with Israel, but they're apostate, they're miry clay, where they're rejecting Jesus Christ, and that's why you have the Abrahamic family house. It's a mixture of Catholicism, Islam, and Judaism all come together to worship in the same place. And Israel's trying to make a selling point of rebuilding the third temple because it would be a place of worship and prayer for all people, not just for the Jews. So you see how they're trying to unite everyone together. They're trying to do all this stuff, but it doesn't quite cling together. But they're going to try to do it anyway, right? It's like The Odd Couple and this very awkward, violent, vicious romantic comedy, right? That's what it seems to be going on here. But with that being said, let's get into what I really want to focus on is Daniel 7, starting at verse 3. We read about there being 4 beasts, all right? And the first one is a lion with eagle's wings and has the wings plucked off and made to stand up as a man and given a man's heart. The second one is a bear, and it's raised up on one side, so it's like it has a stronger side than the other, and it devours much flesh, where it has 3 ribs in its mouth. Then the third one is a 4-headed leopard with 4 wings, and it's given dominion. And then we have a beast that isn't described as anything other than just dreadful and terrible. It's not described as any animal. And it has 10 horns, right? And it has iron teeth. So you can see here with this iron, it gives you a representation of where it comes from, the iron. They're giving you this connection to the statue where who was the iron? It's a mixture of Rome and Islam, right? Roman Catholicism and Islam. That mixture there, right? So if this 4th beast is that, well then if we go backwards, who would the leopard be? Well, the leopard would be Greece, which makes sense. The leopard was fast, and it conquered a large area very quickly. But then Alexander the Great died, and 4 generals took over. So it explains why there would be 4 heads, right? And then if we go reverse from that, who would be the bear? Well, the bear would be Medo-Persia. It explains why it's raised up on one side, right? Because Persia was bigger and stronger than Medo, but they worked together, right? Which would mean that the lion is Babylon. And it makes sense here because Babylon would use a winged lion. And Nebuchadnezzar was humbled to be a beast and then eventually brought back to his senses. And you can say was given the heart of a man because he ended up worshiping God, right? So this interpretation of the beasts and what they are makes a whole lot of sense, right? But I think there's something said here. While Daniel is in the middle of the kingdom of Babylon, he saw 4 beasts. I thought I saw something there where he says these come up after, but I don't see anything actually that says that these beasts came up after, right? He says he saw these 4 beasts, and you can say they come up after Babylon, right? But let's see if that makes sense. That's why we're going to spend a little bit of time here. We're going to look at different views. All right, so if these are the beasts that come up after Babylon, well then, who is the lion? Well, the next kingdom that rules is actually Medo-Persia. Well, Medo-Persia, I don't see how they represent a lion that had wings, and how did they stand up like a man and was given the heart of a man? I can't see a connection there. Right? Maybe you can argue that they went and they were devouring like a lion, but eventually they changed things around and they actually restored Israel as a nation through Cyrus. Maybe that has something to do with it, right? But then if we go to the bear, the next kingdom would be Greece that took over. I'm not quite sure how the bear would represent Greece. I guess you can say it devoured much flesh. It conquered, a lot of ribs, you could say, right? But raised up on one side, I guess it was stronger more towards Greece than towards the east. I don't know. I don't know how that would fit Greece. I mean, like I just brought up, you could try, and I guess it fits. But it doesn't seem to fit all too well, because then you have this leopard. Who's the leopard? Well, this leopard would be a mix, right? Or you could say it's the kingdoms that broke up from Greece, right? The 4 generals. But they didn't really go forth conquering and necessarily, I guess they had dominion. It says dominion was given to them, right? So I guess that's what we would apply it to, right? The 4 kingdoms that rose up after the bear, being Alexander the Great, I suppose. And he already conquered, so I guess, the leopard has dominion. And it makes a little bit of sense because the leopard has 4 heads. I don't understand the 4 wings then. I don't get that. Maybe it's just saying they're 4 wings because they're spread off to the 4 different directions. That could possibly be it. But then the leopard being yellow, black, and white makes some sense because it was diverse going into Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and into Europe. So it's like a mixture of the descendants of Noah, being Ham, Japheth, and I forgot the name of his other son. Shem. There we go. Ham, Japheth, and Shem. So, that makes a little bit of sense. So then what's the kingdom that rises up afterwards? Well, then you see the iron, right? That actually makes some sense here when you look at it that way. Because that comes up next is the iron. The iron beast. Because I call it the iron beast because it says it has iron teeth. So it's letting you know where it comes from, right? So it's a mixture of the Roman Catholic Empire with the Islamic Empire. This is what's eventually about to form, right? Because we're already past this time of this 4-headed beast, right? And then this is where we learn about the 10 horns and the little horn being the Antichrist that comes up out of this beast right here, right? This joining, this mixture. And we see it happening where the West has been flooding into the Middle East, setting up bases and attacking in the Middle East and moving in there. And then we have Muslims migrating mainly into Europe, but also into America. So you see that it's all mixing. They're already trying to do it. And we see that it doesn't quite cleave together, right? They try to bring it together, but it doesn't quite cleave together, just like it's prophesied to happen, that the iron and clay doesn't quite mix. It has problems, but they're still trying to do it anyway. Right? They're trying to make it work, right? Because it's a romantic comedy that's very violent and twisted and gruesome, but it's ultimately supposed to be a romantic comedy, if you're into that kind of thing. But, it's not actually very romantic or funny, so it's more of a horror show. They mislabeled it. You know what I mean? But, so that's another way to look at it. But there's also another way to look at it. Right? We're going to look at it in this other way. and we'll take it from there. And I don't know of a fourth or fifth or other way to look at this, to be honest. But this third way is interesting, right? And the point being is that in Daniel chapter 2, each kingdom takes over the previous kingdom, right? Gold is taken over by the silver, taken over by the brass, taken over by the iron, and then I guess very much taken over by the iron and clay, right? And here, it doesn't say they take over one another. It shows that they're existing at the same time, kind of thing, right? Right? But it still ends in the same way at verse 9, where it talks about the Ancient of Days, right? Where he sets up his kingdom, right? So it's telling us about the same time, but it's telling us a little bit something different. So if we take this third way, let's take a look at it here. And it goes like this, that this is some time of what's going on during the time of grace, right? When we read Daniel chapter 2, it's the point of view of what Israel's going to go through. And this vision that he sees here is what is going on in the time of grace right before the iron and clay feet with the 10 toes or 10 kings. As we see here, this beast at verse 7 and 8 has 10 horns, right? And they represent 10 kings, right? So it says that the lion with eagle's wings is England, right? So if we take that, we can look at England, and it does use a lion. It used to use a lion with wings, but if you notice on its crest, there is no more wings on the lion, which is interesting. Some people say, oh, the wings given to America, right? The eagle. You know, you could look at it that way. But this lion, its wings are plucked off, and it's made to stand on its feet as a man and giving a man's heart. You could argue that England had its empire phase, but its wings were plucked off. And I guess before that real empire phase, it went from Catholicism to Protestantism, given the KJV, and then was basically, humbled, right? And they're just kind of there. They got an influence, but they don't have a strong influence and power, even though they're the ones today really pushing that digital ID, saying you can't work in the UK without that digital ID. So, there's something interesting to say about that, right? Another thing you could think about here is the lion being, I guess it is a fourth interpretation, but the lion of the tribe of Judah. But England says that they are from the tribe of Dan, that they are from the tribes of Israel, right? So you got that kind of a sort of connection. But I don't know how I would apply the lion to Israel other than the lion of the tribe of Judah, right? It having its wings plucked off and made to stand up like a man and given a man's heart. I'm not quite sure how to apply that if that was the case. But with people saying that the lion is England, they then go to the bear being Russia, where Russia used a bear as its animal. It's raised up on one side. If you look at its population density, to the west of Russia, it basically has over like 70% of its population to the west. And to the east half of Russia, there's barely anybody. Right? And I'm not even exaggerating. It may even be higher than 70% of the population is towards the actual east, more towards Europe. I mean, the west towards Europe, and not towards the east, towards the Pacific and North Korea and what have you. But makes a little bit of sense because they're saying right now that Russia is going to rise up and devour much flesh, and the 3 ribs might be 3 areas that it conquers. I guess the first one, which looks like it's going to be done, would be Ukraine. After that, I would imagine we would see Poland, and I don't know who the third one would be. I would imagine pushing into Europe, but I can't say for sure, right? Because if they get Ukraine, they grab Poland to give a little buffer to protect the resources that they would end up taking from the Ukraine and all their grain fields, where Ukraine produces something like 25% of the world's grain. So, a little buffer to protect that, something along those lines. I don't know. Maybe that's what's going to happen. So then who's the leopard? Well, some of this makes sense, some of it doesn't make sense. They'll say that it's America, right? And it says it's, each one of these beasts, it says like a lion, like a bear, like a leopard. That doesn't mean that it is a leopard. It's like a leopard. So it could be like the American jaguar kind of thing, right? And America is a melting pot of all the different racial groups. So that's why it's a leopard, right? It's yellow, it's white, and it's black, right? It has 4 wings because this is the country that's given dominion. America has dominion. It has 4 wings, you can say, representing the fact that it has the largest air force by far. It uses the helicopters that has the 4 little propeller things on it, blades, right? You can say the 4 wings because it's stretched out, where you have America, the mainland, and then you have Alaska, Hawaii, and you could argue stretched out to Cuba, or it's going to take Venezuela as another wing, and Trump has been saying he wants Greenland, so that would be another little stretch out. Or you could argue Israel has something to do with being one of the wings, so that would have it stretched out there as one of the wings. And, that interpretation makes a little bit of sense there, other than the 4 heads, right? What's up with the 4 heads? On Mount Rushmore, is there 4 president heads there? Because that would make some sense there, where it shows these 4 heads there. It's kind of weird. I think there might have been 5, but if there's 4 heads there, that would make this line up a little bit better. But people think that eventually, because of the chaos and turmoil going on in America, that the nation would be split up into 4. You'd have the Northeast, the West, a mid-north, and a southwest chunks that break up, right? And they become their own little regions, and they still work together, but instead of having 1 president, they have 4 presidents, kind of thing, right? I mean, we'll have to wait and see if that's something that happens. But if that's the case, then you come over here and you have this 4th beast. Who is this 4th beast? Well, it's some kingdom that eventually rises up, right? And it may have something to do with the Abraham Accords, some kind of deal they're going to make here. Maybe it has something to do with BRICS, right? Some coalition, right? But it's really hard to say when you use this interpretation. It seems to fit all right. But this last beast is something I guess we're on the brink of, and that's why we can't quite see it, right? And I would assume, like it has the iron teeth, it's giving you a hint of who it is. Just like the 10 toes, this has 10 kings and it's iron, that it's this beast here, right? It's diverse from all the other beasts. So it's like completely different. Right? Completely different from the beast that came before it. Completely different. Diverse. And that may have something to do with it being a mixture of the two Babylonian religions of worshiping the sun and the moon, Roman Catholicism and Islam, right? That they joined together here. And this joining, it's tough to say because it makes it sound like this beast is diverse, right? But at the same time, it sounds like it's when all these beasts come together. Because if we take this now and come over here to Revelation chapter 13, right, we see this beast that comes up out of the sea, right? It has 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, right? So it's 10 kings. And upon his heads the name of blasphemy, right? And then it says this beast was like unto a leopard, and it had feet as a bear and a mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Right? So then, who or what is this? Well, it obviously seems to be a mixture of all those kingdoms in Daniel chapter 7, right? The leopard, the bear, the lion. So if we take that and we use the different views, let's see if either one of these makes sense. So basically we got that it be Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and a Roman Islamic mix. We can see that forming right now, can't we? But what if we took it to be this other view, where it's England, Russia, America, and then a Roman Islamic mix? We don't quite see that. I'm not saying that that can't happen, but that looks way less likely than the other version, right? Especially since when we go back to Daniel and we read about the Antichrist, he comes from the northwest and he has trouble with the east, right? And the east doesn't seem to be as a big part of it, and the east would be like Russia, China, India, North Korea, right? Those areas more atheistic, except for Russia, which you could say is why Russia may join up, right? I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen or that it won't, but the way I understand the world as a stage, and all this headbutting like America with Russia is just more of a show, and they very well could all just come together, right? And I could see that happening. But also these, I guess that would bring up all the nations that need to be brought up, right? You'd bring it all together. You'd bring in the Roman Empire with the Islamic Empire, and then the ones that branch off of there that weren't part of that, which would be Russia, England, America. I guess that makes a little bit more sense than when I first really thought about it, but it also makes sense if you take the Roman and the Islamic kingdoms together, and then you have already tied up in that all the other kingdoms, right? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Israel, right? Because they're the miry clay. So let's roll with that. Let's roll with that view of England, Russia, America. Right? Let's roll with that. So at verse 3 here it says, "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." Right? And if you ask me, the leopard is given dominion, right? So I would see that as America has that deadly wound, but it's healed. Because even the occult, Freemason, Illuminati, secret societies talk about America being a phoenix that will burn and rise from the ashes, right? So it's almost like they're planning and expecting it to happen. And it makes sense, because if you have a rapture and sudden destruction, judgment first starts at the house of God. So, the Christians will be judged first. So it makes sense that that's where the deadly wound would happen, right? Makes a whole lot of sense, right? And it could make sense of where they break up and become four heads. Right? They become four heads. They're broken up into four, right? And going back to Daniel 7, where it talks about the indescript beast, it mentions how there's 10 horns, and a little horn pops up, uprooting 3, which could mean that when America breaks up into 4, the little horn is already in charge of one of the areas, and then uproots the other 3 kings to then reestablish America, and the deadly wound is healed. And then people were like, how is this possible? How are we going to make war against this power, right? And as it says here at verse 5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he's speaking great things. And verse 6, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. All right? And we know that the dominion was given to the leopard in Daniel chapter 7. Right? So there might be that connection there again, which definitely leads to DJT being that guy, where he definitely has the mouth willing to speak great things, especially against God. And if he had dominion, he would just go after whoever he wanted to, right? Yeah. As it says at verse 8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And just a quick thing about those people not written in the book. You notice that it never mentions anybody ever blotted out of the book of life, because no one ever is blotted out of the book of life. It's just being written in it or not. If you're not written in it, then you don't have life. And if you're written in it, you don't have to worry about being blotted out. We're told that Jesus will not blot us out. Right? So if you're in it, you're in it. But that's just a little side note. So if that's the case, right? If that's what's happening, right? We go back to Daniel. We have the iron being Roman Catholic Islamic union that eventually becomes the feet that have the 10 toes of iron and clay, that there's a period in between the iron legs and the feet. It's a time of grace, which looks like it's Daniel chapter 7, where you have England, Russia, and America pop up right before this final kingdom comes into play, which apparently triggers the rapture, if you think about it, right? Because you have this indescript beast in Daniel chapter 7, and dominion is given over to the leopard. So we're in that position right now where the leopard has dominion. It doesn't have 4 heads, right? But even when it has 4 heads, it has dominion. So that's America, let's just go with that. This other kingdom hasn't quite been established, but it looks like the leopard is trying to help that happen. Right? The leopard is trying to help that happen with the Abrahamic Accords, trying to actually bring this kingdom together to form it. And it shows when this kingdom comes together, this beast comes up out of the sea, right? There's a deadly wound to one of the heads. Right? Deadly wound, but it comes back. And the whole world goes after it. Like it says here, where is it at verse 8? Yeah, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. And the church of Philadelphia in Revelation chapter 3 is told that they're going to be kept from the hour of temptation that's going to come upon all that dwell upon the earth. Right? So they're going to be gone, not dwelling on the earth, right? And that gives you a hint that the rapture has happened. Whether it happens right when the beast is coming up, around the time of the deadly wound, we know that by this time that the wound is healed, we have a hint that the church is gone, right? So, if that's the case, we have to figure out this here. Because there's another beast, a lamb-like beast that has 2 horns. And the horns represent leaders or kings, right? I guess they don't have to be kings necessarily if they don't have crowns, right? And this beast has the power of the beast that was before him, and he causes everybody else to worship that first beast. Right? And this one here is able to do all kinds of different miracles, all kinds of crazy stuff. Make an image to the beast and all this stuff. You can't buy or sell. So who would this be if that's the case? Who would it be? Because a beast represents some kind of nation, some kind of kingdom, right? So what nation, what kind of kingdom comes up that would have 2 horns? So it comes up like a lamb, so it comes up kind of innocent-like, kind of Judo-Christian-like, but it speaks as a dragon, like Satan. Who or what would this be? And I'll tell you some views that I've had, but I can't say for sure. And the views are, if we go with what I just said, that this beast here, I would see as something along the lines of the Vatican. Because it comes up like a lamb, speaks as a dragon, has 2 horns, where the Pope is a king of the nation state of the Vatican and is the head of a church. Right? And the current Pope is American, so if America fell and came back up and they did their thing, I wouldn't be surprised if, you'd push everybody to go after America, worshiping that beast, right? Or Trump. I'm pretty sure Trump had some kind of help and say in him being the next pope there. But that would be my first guess if we go along with this way of viewing it. All right? Now, other views I've had is looking at this as Israel itself, right? Because the beast mixed with the miry clay, and you see that this beast is doing similar things to like Elijah, calling fire down from heaven right? It's being like Elijah. So it comes like a lamb, like a Jew, right? And it causes everybody to worship the first beast, right? But the two horns, what would that be? Again, a political, religious leadership? I don't know, right? The two horns, I wouldn't know what to say unless it's like ruling over the 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes, right? Israel and Judah. Excuse me. But also with false prophecy, you could tie in some false prophet for the Jews or with, again, Rome. But you can also tie in Muhammad and the Muslims, false prophecies, right? But I don't know how to make that fit because I wouldn't call them lamb-like, and I don't know what the two horns would be in that sense, right? But I've had other thoughts that this was like, for example, America coming up like a lamb, already basically mixed with Israel. So you got the two horns there, America and Israel. False prophecy, yeah, you got tons of that, especially in America, right? And America seems to have the power to call fire down from heaven, where people have shown that laser beam that destroyed things in California and Hawaii and other places, but apparently it can't destroy blue roofs and blue cars, but it can just basically melt through anything else. Yeah, that might be that, right? I mean, I could say that could be very well connected there, right? And yeah, you see why I would say such a thing, right? But if that would be America, that changes everything, doesn't it? Right? Because let's say this is America mixed with Israel, the lamb-like beast that basically gets everybody to worship this reformed Roman Catholic Islamic beast that comes together, which makes some sense, right? Because they're both seem to be okay with supporting Roman Catholicism, Islam with the Abrahamic family house, right? Trump says he's a Christian, but he never asked God for forgiveness and doesn't know if he's going to go to heaven, doesn't think he'll make it. And he's buddies with Muslims and doesn't mind allowing them to come in and do their thing, right? Because he's all for the unity too, right? So we could see that right there, right? But then again, that would change everything. You have to go all the way back to Daniel 7 and look at those beasts and be like, okay, this is not America, this is not Israel. It would have to be something like Medo-Persia, maybe even Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq. You have to look at Greece and the kingdoms that Greece broken up into, so that whole area in the Middle East going into a bit of northern Africa, Egypt area, right? And Assyria. You could even bring in Turkey into all that. And the 4 kingdoms that it broke up into there. And yeah, then you'd bring in all the Roman Catholic and Islamic nations together. So, you know, it would still fit there, other than we'd have to relook at, okay, with a deadly wound. What would the deadly wound be? Would it be their actual power to open and reign openly, to do whatever they wanted to do? They don't have that power anymore. They received that deadly wound, such as when Napoleon marched into the Vatican and threw the Pope in prison. Is that it? Or is the wound being healed when the Vatican became a city-state in, like, what, 1927? Right before World War I and everything. Or right around World War I should say. And World War II was going to get started up. All the Great Depression, all that stuff going on. All right, you have to rethink about everything. What would that deadly wound be? Because then it's healed. It could represent something to do with this beast here making an image. So what if it's somebody that has died and they make a holographic image of them? Like some Caesar, some Nero fella, Muhammad. I don't know. Something to just have to rethink about. But I just wanted to make a quick video. I know I'm not like giving anything concrete here. It's more of just some thoughts to think about. Right? Because the iron in Daniel chapter 2, I can see clearly now, is Roman Catholicism and Islam. And then eventually with the clay, is they're mixing with Israel. And we see that happening right now. But how that applies to the beast in Daniel 7 and how it applies to the beast here in Revelation 13, I'm not exactly sure on that, as you can tell. But sometimes making a video like this, you end up getting through some of the muck and mud, and you get to see things a little clearer. And then sometimes people throw some things at you, so you're able to see things clear when they reply. But all in all, that is that. Thank you for your time and attention. Take care. I'll see you in the next one. All right, it's the end of the video. And I figured I would do an ending segment to my video so I don't have to keep repeating myself. But I do want to remind you to do what Isaiah said to do and seek out the book of the Lord and read it, putting line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, doing what Paul said, and studying the word, showing yourself approved unto God, rightly dividing the word of truth. And if you read English, that would be the KJV. And then do what John has Jesus recorded telling the church of Philadelphia, and keep his word, preserve it, protect it, hide it in your hearts, and not deny his name. And then Jesus will never be able to tell you you do err not knowing the scriptures. And he'll keep you from the hour of temptation, which is going to come upon all those that dwell upon the earth here shortly. And with that being said, I'd like to ask you for your support. You watching the video all the way to the end helps out a lot. But if you could like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, share the video, share the channel, interact in the comments section. These things help out a lot, especially with people telling me that their likes are not being registered, that they get unsubscribed, and all kinds of other ways being shadow banned. Your help in this way was greatly appreciated. And if you're able to give me a little bit more time and pray to our Heavenly Father that he keeps this ministry going and he uses it to reach those who he wants to reach, to get the truth out to the world, to make it a bright light, and to feed his sheep, to feed his children, even to bring forth more children, and that he would watch over all of us, his born-again believers, and take care of us, provide for us, and protect us, even after he comes and gets us, which looks like it's going to be real soon. And just to amen in Jesus' name to that should be all we need. But if you could help out some more, I know times are rough and they look like they're getting rougher, but if you're able to support financially, there's a few ways you can do so in the info description box, such as PayPal, Venmo, and there's a couple other ways you can support if you so choose to do so, which would make sure I can keep this ministry going longer than the foreseeable future, because this kind of support has been drying up there. It's pretty much non-existent lately. So If you could help out in that way, it would be greatly appreciated to make sure I can keep doing this. But if you could at least pray, I know God will provide. And sometimes it's a change of ministry, so maybe it won't be a ministry online anymore. But hey, if you want to keep seeing this stuff, pray. And with all that being said, thank you so much again for your time and attention, for watching this video all the way through. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one, and may God bless you and yours.